Hello and welcome to the history of George S. Hammond. Master Braytac has been known to call him Hammond of Texas, referring to Hammond's home state, and occasionally gesturing with the palm over his head, referring to Hammond's bald head. Hammond is a widower. His wife, Mary Ann Hammond, died of cancer in 1994. In her honor, Hammond continues to wear his wedding ring. He has two grandchildren, Kayla and Tessa, whose phone number is keyed to the number 1 button on his office phone above the President of the United States. A former Air Force pilot during the Vietnam War, Hammond witnessed his best friend get shot down, but his body was never recovered. In 1997, Major General George S. Hammond was head of the United States Air Force's Stargate Command. He replaced Major General W.O. West, who commanded Project Giza during the original excursion to Abydos. An Air Force officer since the mid-1960s, shutting down the Stargate program was to be his last assignment before retirement. When Apophis and several Serpent Guards came through the gate and killed 4 Air Force personnel and kidnapped a senior airman, he led a team of reinforcements to Level 28. They arrived just before Apophis stepped through the gate. 1999, Hammond would keep watch for the time that SG1 would be sent back in time, having assigned Carter in 1997 to research an alternative application for the gate. This allowed her to discover how solar flares on the opposite side of the Sol, Earth's star, could affect the gate. Once she ended up with the cut on her hand that was later treated, the same one she had when he met her in 1969, and a mission scheduled during a solar flare activity. He gave her a handwritten note to be placed in her vest pocket for his younger self with 2 dates for future solar flares, so that they would be able to return home. 2003. As time went on, however, Hammond came to realize the benefits of gate travel. He would sometimes butt heads with Colonel Jack O'Neill on some points, but he relied on O'Neill and SG1 more than any other unit, trusting their perspective, judgments, and more than once showing a willingness to go along with their suggestions regardless of the limited evidence available, such as when he sent SG1 to Abydos to defend the Abydonians against attack from Anubis, based on information that O'Neill had allegedly acquired from the currently ascended Dr. Daniel Jackson. 2004. After Henry Hayes was inaugurated as President of the United States, Hammond, a former Air Force colleague of Hayes, was assigned as one of his advisors during the conflict with Anubis and commander of the Prometheus at the Battle of Antarctica. After the battle, Hammond was promoted to Lieutenant General and appointed the first commander of Homeworld Security, a department that was in control of Stargate Command, the Prometheus Project, Area 51, and the Alpha Site. 2005. He later took a political position in President Henry Hayes' administration and was later succeeded as Commander of Homeworld Security by Major General Jack O'Neill, while General Hank Landry succeeded O'Neill as the new head of Stargate Command. 2008. In a conversation with Lieutenant Colonel John Shepard, Colonel Samantha Carter confirms that George Hammond died of a heart attack sometime in 2008. The Daedalus class warship Phoenix, the newest ship to be built, was renamed the George Hammond in his honor, with Carter taking command of the ship. 2009. At the launching ceremony of the George Hammond, General Hammond is commented upon by the Secretary of State as a fine man, who she regrets can't witness the launch of the ship named in his honor. General Jack O'Neill points out that if Hammond was still around, the 304 wouldn't be named after him, and the secretary finds naming the George Hammond after General Hammond is a fitting way to honor his memory. As Carter prepares to take command of her new ship, she can't help but hope that in some sense General Hammond is with them witnessing, seeing what he had wrought, and silently thanks them. Thank you for watching the history of George Hammond. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you can. If you did, thank you. Special thanks to Stargate Fandom for all information you heard today. Bye-bye. The history of the USAF George Hammond. The George Hammond, formerly known as the Phoenix and sometimes referred to as the Hammond, is the sixth 304 produced by the United States of America and the fourth operated by the U.S. Air Force, and is assigned to the 2nd Tactical Wing. The ship is named in honor of the late Lieutenant General George S. Hammond and is currently under the command of Colonel Samantha Carter. After commissioning, the George Hammond was stationed at Atlantis during the conflict with Queen Det and participated in several battles with the Wraith, including the final battle of the war. It later returned to Earth and aided in the battles against the Lucian Alliance. The George Hammond is a BC-304 class vessel. It has maneuvering thrusters, sublight drive, and Asgard hyperdrive. It uses Naquadria as a fuel, Asgard power core, Asgard shields. Its hull is comprised of a Naquadria Trillium alloy. It has Asgard sensor array, Earth targeting systems, computer navigation systems. Her armament includes 4 Asgard plasma beam weapons, 32 railguns, 16 VLS missile tubes, Mark 8 and Mark 9 nuclear missiles, has a complement of 16 F-302s, and also contains an Asgard computer core, Asgard transporters, long-range transmitter, and transportation rings. The George Hammond became the 5th of the BC-304 class of ships built by the Tauri. As it neared completion, General Jack O'Neill was supplied with a list of names of possible commanding officers for the ship. Top of the list was Colonel Samantha Carter. Carter became aware that she was going to be offered the command of the Hammond, but had her doubts about whether she wanted to take it. After an encounter with the alternate timeline version of herself in 2492 BC, Carter decided to accept command of the ship. The George Hammond is eventually launched from Area 51 in a ceremony attended by the Secretary of State, a mixture of dignitaries, and construction crew, O'Neill and SG1. After making a speech, the Secretary of State breaks a bottle of champagne against the Hammond's bow and the ship is launched into space. During the time Atlantis was on Earth, the Hammond was being outfitted for her launch. As Atlantis was not returning to the Pegasus Galaxy, the Hammond and the Daedalus would take shifts in the Pegasus Galaxy, battling with the Wraith. The George Hammond was an upgraded version of the 304 class, with the most recent generation of features the 304s possessed. Though built along the same lines as the other ships of the class, the George Hammond was described as having a more heavily armored superstructure around the bridge, as well as larger and wider 302 bays. The ship possessed improved reverse thrusters, making it easier for the George Hammond to land in smaller spaces than the Daedalus, Odyssey, or Apollo. She also possessed a new series of railguns as part of her armaments. When talking about the ship with Lieutenant Colonel John Shepard, Colonel Samantha Carter stated that the George Hammond made the Prometheus look like a Wright glider. The Wraith also considered the George Hammond to be deadlier than any of the other Tauri ships that came to the Pegasus Galaxy. Before, without ever having engaged the ship in battle, and having simply learned of it from a spy amongst the Genii. Background information. The origin of the name Phoenix comes from the legendary bird of the same name. The Phoenix was said to live a long life, and then after its death would burst into flames and be reborn again. The ship was originally going to be named the Phoenix in the current timeline, However, after the death of Don S. Davis, and consequently his character, Lieutenant General George S. Hammond, the ship had been renamed in his honor. The large display console located on the bridge of the George Hammond is illuminated in an orange light. Compared to the display on other BC-304s, the Hammond's display protrudes forward far less and is more reminiscent of the panel on the Prometheus, however turned sideways. Despite losing the Asgard plasma beam weapons in the Battle of the Wraith and not repairing them for the rest of the conflict with Queen Death, the Hammond proves to be extremely effective in battle against Wraith hive ships. During the battle over the Outer Rim planets, the Hammond becomes the first Earth ship to destroy a hive ship without using any nuclear weapons or plasma beam weapon. It also does so while practically crippled. Later, the Hammond goes one-on-one against other hive ships and does significant damage due to the crew's better tactics. The hive ship is stated to have lost half of its weapon arrays to the Hammond's attack, and sustained heavy damage against the Hammond and is forced to retreat with the Hammond's reinforcement when Wraith reinforcements arrive. While stationed on Atlantis, the Hammond repeatedly receives heavy damage and is never fully repaired, as it can't be without going back to Earth. As a result, it lacks its plasma beam weapons for most of the conflict. The ship also has a problem with its dorsal shield due to the inability to repair the ship. Every time the ship's damage is mostly repaired, it is sent back out on a mission and receives even more damage that has to once again be repaired without help from Earth. During the final battle with the Wraith, Colonel Cameron Mitchell and Teal'c briefly came aboard the Hammond as F-302 pilots to aid in the battle. Thank you for watching the history of the USAF George Hammond. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you can. If you've already subscribed, thank you. And have a great day.